Hi, I'm Femi OK. You're watching the stream. A year ago, we made a pledge to you, our viewers, that we would bring as many diverse voices to you as possible, and that every single year we would aim for 50% men and 50% women. So let's take a look at our gender equality report card and see how we did. In 2016 and 2017, not that great. We got gender equality in 2018, 2019 and 2020. We did so much better. Here is the executive producer of the stream, Barry Malone, with more.
I'm very pleased that the stream has, for the third year running, achieved its goal of at least 50-50 gender representation in our guests across a calendar year. This year we had 56% female guests and 44% male. I think it was particularly important that we highlighted the voices of women in 2020. Women were on the front lines of the coronavirus pandemic. In fact, 70% of health workers across the world are women. In Nigeria, the massive End SARS protests were led by female activists. And in the United States, Kamala Harris became the first female vice president in history. The stream renews its gender balance pledge, and we look forward to highlighting the important voices of women in 2021 and beyond.
Barry Malone there, looking ecstatic about being on camera. I have to tell you though, really, his happy place is right here in the comments section. He is a master curator. YouTubers stand by for more Barry Malone in just a moment. But we continue coming up on today's show, our mission to bring you brilliant women. Three excellent guests. We're going to be talking about the COVID crisis. We're going to be talking about US politics and also protests in Nigeria. If you can jump into YouTube comments, you're going to have to be quick because this is a fast moving show and we really look forward to hearing from you. We start with the COVID crisis. Here is Verena Winder.
The nightmare scenario predicted back in April of up to 50 million women and girls losing access to contraception has fortunately not come to pass. Shortly after the onset of COVID, the WHO recognized family planning as an essential service, which meant that governments, major suppliers, major implementers, advocacy by women and girls have all been working together and tirelessly to ensure that services could remain open as safely as possible. However, family planning is the second most disrupted health service behind routine immunizations. At Family Planning 2020, where I work, we have long recognized family planning to be basic, critical, essential healthcare for women and girls, and we know that we have to continue to adapt and deliver, especially with and for the hardest to reach and young people.
Welcome back to the stream, Dr. Argavan Salis. Really nice to see you. When we first had you on the stream, you had just been volunteering in New York City. That was the hotspot in the whole of the United States for where the COVID crisis had hit the hardest. If you were looking at the US right now, what would you see? How would you explain what's happening right now with COVID?
Yeah, well, thanks so much for having me on again. One thing that I want to point out is that, well, I'm actually traveling right now. I'm out, not at my home state, working in Arizona right now with their surge. When we last talked, I had just come back from New York. And just to put things in perspective, where we are now compared to where we were then, at that time, we had about 30,000 new cases a day. And now, as of yesterday, we had 220,000 new cases. So we have 10 times more new cases of COVID a day. We also have far more hospitalizations, about twice as many hospitalizations right now for COVID as we did back in April. And then we have about 50% more people in the intensive care unit and 25% more people on a ventilator. We also this week hit a really awful record of the most number of deaths per day from COVID, which was almost 3,200. So we're sitting in a far worse situation nationally, at least in the US, than we were back in April. And despite that, there are actually more people traveling now, far more people traveling now than there were then. So around mid-April, we had about 80 to 90,000 air travelers a day. And on the 11th, which was the last TSA data that I had access to, we had almost 790,000. So about 10 times more people traveling, despite the fact that the pandemic is at the worst that it's been.
Argavan, I'm looking at one of your tweets right here on my laptop. The other day, as I was walking into the hospital, I saw when someone shared one of my tweets as evidence of how real COVID is. Another person said, mine was a parody account. What exactly I was supposedly parodying, I don't know. Have a look. Have a look at this, everybody, on my laptop right here, so that you can see it and also see you in your mask, because I think it's a really good contrast to where you were earlier.
Yeah, I
Go
mean,
ahead.
I snapped a photo as I was walking into the hospital, because I was walking in the hospital to take care of patients who are sick in the ICU, because of COVID. And I have no idea why somebody said that I was a parody. What I had tweeted was that we were opening up new ICUs and additional units every day. Each day at that point, we had opened an additional unit to help accommodate more COVID patients. And what I had said was we can't keep going like that for very long because we run out of space and we run out of staff. And for whatever reason, somebody decided that I was a parody. I mean, I wish I were a comedian of some kind, but unfortunately, I was just sharing the reality of what's going on here.
One of the things that we've been talking about recently, and a lot, not just in the United States, but around the world, vaccines. But today, because we are actually honouring brilliant women, including yourself, I would love you to tell us about the vaccines where women have actually been pioneering them. They're at the head of the curve, because we're not always seeing that. We're not always seeing that work behind the scenes, where you happen to know that women are integral to the vaccine, the speedy vaccines that we are about to have right now.
Yeah, it's so exciting that exactly you're right. We are on the verge of having these vaccines be more widely available. We just in the US got the emergency use approval for the Pfizer vaccine on Friday, so 2 days ago, which is awesome. And they're shipping out, I think, either today or tomorrow. So that's amazing. And just to put that in perspective, we have 3 vaccines that we've got some really promising data for, one from Pfizer and BioNTech, and then one from Moderna and one from AstraZeneca. And 2 of those 3, so the Pfizer and the Moderna one, both use mRNA as the modality. And that technique and that technology was developed by a woman. So if you want to talk about the importance of women to vaccines, right there you have it. We also know that women in science have played really important roles broadly, basically forever, and yet have been erased most of the time from their importance of their contributions. And so I'm really hoping that in this modern day and age, that the women who are involved in developing these vaccines and whatever treatments we may eventually have for COVID will get their due credit, and that will appreciate the contributions that they're making.
One of the things I love about your Twitter feed is that there's a combination of feminism, activism, COVID, great information, and some sassiness as well. I love all of it. And and yoga. All right. So this is important here. And I think we were talking about COVID this year and women's involvement. And this is something that you shared. In case anyone forgot, nurses are not subordinates of doctors. We are co-workers of an interdisciplinary team. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Expand on that a little bit more, because you shared that with some gusto.
I did, yeah. And actually, someone had tagged me on that because there's some research I've been doing with some colleagues looking at the interactions between physicians and nurses, and in particular, the interactions between women surgeons and women nurses. And so this person who I've been communicating with, Heather Tubbs Cooley, she's a nurse, and I had just emailed her about a question about the research that we're working on, and then she saw it and tagged me, which I super appreciated because it was right to the heart of what we're working on. There is, I mean, historically, if you look back 50 years, 100 years ago, the vast majority of physicians were men and the vast majority of nurses were women. And there was this sort of hierarchical relationship where the doctors were up here and the nurses were down here. I'm not saying that's good. I'm just saying that's what it was. And things really have evolved. And I think that's what that tweet is trying to say. It's not really like
Right.
that anymore. Like
Yeah.
just this morning, I'm rounding in the ICU. When I go to the patient's bedside, the first thing I do is talk to the nurse. What's going on here? What are you seeing? What are you concerned about? Because they're right there at the bedside and they have all the
Yeah.
information. We cannot adequately care for patients without the nurses. And of course, we bring a different expertise than they do, so we work together. It has to be that way.
Dr. Aga Gonzalez, thank you for bringing your particular brand of activism, feminism, and also compassion to the stream today. We really appreciate you. Thank you very much indeed. So now we move on. The trend of women running for office in the United States continues this year. And I want to introduce you to Simona Grace and Elisa Crespo. They explain to us why this is happening. Have a listen, have a look.
Women are actively going after these positions of power because they understand the need to add their voices to the policymaking table, especially during a time of crisis. And our society during a time of crisis, and even before, our society is looking for authenticity in our leadership. And our society views women as exactly these kind of authentic leaders who care about their communities, who will prioritize the needs of working families during a crisis.
I think the increase in women elected officials across the board, both trans and cisgender alike, means that people are demanding change, that they want more diversity, that they understand that women have solutions to our problem, and that women have something to bring to the table. It also means that women are standing in their own power, in their truth, and women are demanding change.
Women demanding change and being elected to bring about change. Hello, Marilyn Strickland. So good to see you. You've been described in so many ways. I am not going to take that power away from you. You introduce yourself to our global audience. Go ahead. Welcome.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me here on this show. My name is Marilyn Strickland, and I am Congresswoman-elect for the 10th Congressional District of Washington State, and I will join the U.S. House of Representatives. And in this particular Congress, the 117th, which will get sworn in January, we will have the largest number of women, and we will have the largest number of women of color in the history of the U.S. So it is an exciting time to serve, but we know that all of us who ran for office did so because we want to help our country and focus on people.
I love that in that description of yourself, you didn't go into, I am the first of this, I'm the first of this for my state. You went straight to the service and to your mission. Why is that? Because you are an historical figure right now. If you're not already in history books, you will be at some point. Why did you not use the first as a way to describe yourself?
So, when I ran for mayor of Tacoma, I served for 2 terms, and I was the first there. I was the first African-American woman and the first Korean-American woman to serve. And yes, it's true. I'm making history again in Washington State and the Pacific Northwest as not just the first African-American woman, but the first African-American to serve as part of this congressional delegation. And yes, the first Korean-American woman who was elected to Congress in this cycle. Those are parts of my identity. They inform who I am, the lens through which I see the world. And yes, those are assets and attributes. But at the end of the day, we want people who are going to Washington, D.C. and to be part of our political culture that want to focus on the work. That's why people elected me. Now, is my story compelling? Absolutely, it's interesting. But that aside, I'm going there to work for the people who sent me.
I am just looking on the top of your Twitter feed here, and you thank the voters for sending you to DC. And we did it there, exclamation mark. As I was watching you do local TV interviews and the local journalists were saying, you're in double digits, are you feeling confident? You were so measured, so calm. And the journalists were trying to get you riled up and you're going to win, it's going to be a landslide. What gave you that inner calm? You were not going to let them carry you away on this tide of enthusiasm. You were so steady at that moment, just on the lead up, the eve of election day. That was just over a month ago.
I believe that we worked very hard as a campaign team. My volunteers, the people who surrounded me, we did everything in our power to win. And at the same time, you want to win with grace, the same way we ask people to lose with grace. And so I'm honored that I won this election by 14 points, especially because it was so competitive. But again, that's the campaign. Now it's time to focus on legislating and doing the work for the people.
I saw you as Dr. Salis was talking, and she was talking about COVID, and you were nodding your head. This is one of your
Yes.
missions, I know. When you get to DC, you have a mission. Explain what that is and why.
So, as the doctor explained, COVID is about to enter the worst stage right now, where we will have the highest number of people who contracted and getting ill, and sadly, some will die. And if you think about the charge that we have as leaders around the world, but especially in the US, we must get this pandemic under control. We must follow science, and we are all thrilled to hear that there is a vaccine now that will be available that was just, approved by the FDA. At the same time, we have to make sure that populations feel comfortable using the vaccine. And we know that with some communities of color, because of the history in the US, people are very skeptical about using a vaccine. We need a national strategy. I am, very, very confident in President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris. Let me say that one more time. Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, and their desire to have a national strategy to address this
Yeah.
pandemic. And, this
Marilyn,
is about people being... Go
I
ahead.
have to go to YouTube, Marilyn. I staying on the same topic, so excuse me for jumping in. YouTube
Okay.
wants to
All right.
talk to you as well. How do you
Okay.
reflect back on Kamala's win? How do you see your win influencing girls and women for generations? Just because you were talking about it right there, and this is YouTube's almost sort of like mind melding with you as you were talking to us. Go
Sure.
ahead.
No, I mean, think about this. If you look around the world, there have been female heads of state in a lot of countries, and the United States still has not, cracked that glass ceiling yet. But Kamala Harris is special. When there was the crowded presidential primary earlier this year, I was supporting Kamala Harris for president, and I think she will be a great president one day. But it's also the historical nature of it. Yes, she is a woman. Yes, she has always had to be twice as good to get half the respect that men get who are on that stage with her when they ran for president. But she is, she has a background that is similar to mine. She is Black and Asian. She is biracial. And she has had to encounter things as a woman of color who's an elected official that other people do not encounter. And despite that, Joe Biden knew that she would be the best person to serve as vice president of the United States of America. So, of course, it's exciting. And I think for a lot of, young girls and young women, we get to see ourselves through her. We see someone
Congresswoman-elect
who is at the table.
Marilyn Strickland, Congressman-elect for the 10th District of Washington State. You have a fantastic story. I hope you'll come back and share more of it with us on the stream. But for now, thank you so much. Appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. So we move on. 2020 will be remembered not just for COVID-19, but for being a year of intense protests and protest movements. I want to introduce you now to filmmakers Mariam and Neville Raymond. And they framed this year as a year of protests and how, in particular, women were right up front of those protests. Have a look. Have a listen.
Women are the experts in their life experiences, and so as a result of the intersection of their identities, whether that is race, religion, ethnicity combined with gender, among others, we see that women face heightened challenges in their opportunities in life, and so it's important that women protest to be able to have their voices heard and lay out their demands exactly as they see fit. Over the course of this past year, we have seen women participate in vital movements such as the Black Lives Matter movement and the climate justice movement as well. They've brought forward new ideas, new solutions, served as important voices in these movements, and also brought forward unheard stories that were ignored in the past.
Andi Kato, it's always a pleasure having you on the stream. Welcome back to the stream. For people who may have not seen past programs that you featured on, reintroduce yourself to our global audience.
Okay, good evening. My name is Andi Kato. I'm a young politician, activist, political analyst, and currently the host of a YouTube show, Ground Zero with Andi Kato, where I seek to educate young Nigerians towards better election decisions. So, yeah, that's Andi Kato.
Thank you so much for being on the stream. Whenever we talk about women in leadership, particularly in Nigeria, your name comes to mind because that is one of your missions in life. When you look back at this year and you look at the End SARS movement in particular, and for anyone who was living under a rock for the last year, not Astro's rock, but a rock, The End SARS movement was about police brutality, which really resonated around the world. Police brutality in Nigeria, and women were at the forefront of that movement. Can you explain why, how that happened?
I remember a couple of days, when when the uproar started again. A young man in Delta State had been killed, and police had driven away with his Lexus. And young men had started again, speaking about it. But young women were kind of like we're upset because we have been trying to push for, state of emergency on sexual and gender-based violence, for people to listen. And once it's gender issues, people just tend to think, oh, it's women issues, let's put it to the side. So we did crack some jokes that time, right? And we said, look, if you people want this to succeed, let women take part in this. That they are shouting, they can't even organize themselves. That's what we're saying. You can't even organize yourself. It wasn't like at that point we had decided no. But we say you can't even organize yourself. If women actually step into this, what you would see would be so much different, and this movement would blow. And just like that, there was no meeting, there was nothing. What women know how to do, what we have been socialized to do, is to show up. And of course, this was a leaderless movement. So in showing up, it was that women know how to do thankless labor. We have been raised to do thankless labor. We have been raised to show up, be efficient, be 10 times better than everyone else, but to stay in the background and say, oh, I don't want to be too bright about this. I don't want people to say I am haughty. I want people to see me as humble. You know what it is, doing everything yet shrinking ourselves. So this was really one of those moments where every tragedy that makes women who we are came to the forefront as our strengths. We know how to put in this work. We have been socialized to do these things. We know how to organize. We know how to be selfless. We know how to do everything perfectly and just stand there and say, no, we don't want to be called leaders. It is who we are. People say, how did we get to this point? I said, no, we've always been like this.
Indi, I want to bring in another voice. This is Renu. Renu is a media strategist, and I want to ask you about the strategy for End SARS going forward into 2021. But here's Renu first of all.
It is important that women protest because for a very long time, for centuries, they've been the victims in so many cases of injustice. They've been also sidelined in so many political movements and advocacies. I've seen them taking vital roles such as being caregivers, crowdfunding, cleaning protest ground, and lots more. So women are wonderful in general, and their participation in protests leads to the effectiveness of so many mass movements.
So if the secret sauce is women in protest movements, where does End SARS then go in 2021?
A lot of civic engagement. What we did was to light a positive fire. People came out protesting police brutality, but at the end of the day, they came and they learned more. They began to understand why they're finding themselves in these situations. Bad leadership, the rot in the system, all of that. And, people have to be there to guide them through this. This is an awakening for many Nigerians. Keep in mind that, of course, we went from colonialism to the brutality of military rule. So we just had a short stint of democracy, and we still are living, with the effect of military rule. Heck, the military boys haven't gone anywhere. So a lot of these things have been normalized in Nigerian society. People think it's okay for soldiers to brutalize you for wearing camo. They think it's okay to be beaten, for things to happen, and then we've just outsourced, normalcy to God. Every day we wake up and like, God, please let it not be me. It might be the other Nigerian, but let me survive today, And now people are beginning to see that, no, something has to change. This is too much. Also, people thought that they were isolated, that, they were just unlucky, or it was the devil. You know how much religion has effects in Nigeria. But now they begin to understand that it's so many of us. It's a system where you have to wake up every day and swim against the tide to survive. And as it is right now, Nigerians can't take it anymore. 2021, civic engagement, education. We're educating. An enlightened populace will demand for more. We're getting there.
All right, Indi, thank you so much. Really appreciate you. Let me show you one quick thing here on my laptop. We've had 3 extraordinary women on our show, and we continue the theme on Instagram Live with Mariam and Nivelle Raymond. They are activists and filmmakers, 2030 GMT from Sunday. You'll find that on IGTV at ajstream. Thanks very much for watching. I'll see you next time. Take care, everybody.